guys, thanks for joining us again. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and like the video. It helps us produce some more content for you and continually updating all these different types of videos of different materials and how-tos just for you. So on this one, I wanted to do a how-to engrave glass. And it seems like there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of tips and tricks of how to do it that tend to overcomplicate the situation. So first off, what I'm going to do is I want to show you how to build a really quick test pattern so that you can take a piece of glass and throw it on the machine and see exactly what the results are going to be. So in Lightburn, what we're going to do is we're going to start out with a small square, and I'm going to hit my shift key so it is proportional. And like I said, we're going to keep it relatively small. I want it to be about 1/2 inch. Okay, so once we have that square set up, I'm going to select it and I'm going to use our grid array and set up enough that I can have multiple power settings and multiple speed settings. So I want 3 rows because I'm going to do 3 different speeds. And then let's see, we'll do our first row will be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, and 70. And click OK. Okay, so now we have an array built. In Lightburn, there's a quick and easy way to get these set up. You can have multiple power levels with one color. So let's say that I'm going to do this top row in 10 inches per second. I will do the second row in 20 inches per second, and about the max of my machine that we'll be using for this test is 30 inches per second. So if we go over here, we're going to do all of our settings right now. 10 inches per second. Max power, we're going to bring up our max power to 100% and our minimum power to 10. And then we'll click on our blue one, and this will be a fill. And we're going to also bring this one up to 20. 100 and 10. And I'm going to do all of these at a scan gap or an interval. My bad. An interval of 0.002 inch. I'm going to have to go back and change this one. 0.2. And then red. Red is not active, so let's turn it on. And this will be 30 inches per second, 100 as our maximum, 10 as our minimum. Real quick, we are going to use the power scale. So with the power scale, this is one of those situations where max power and min power do matter. There's a lot of confusion about that as well, and I'll explain it real quick. Max power is referenced in cutting. That is going to be your straight line cutting, and the min power is recognizing cutting as well for anything that is not a straight line. So your curves, your corners, stuff like that. So you're going to want to input those with some variation because obviously when it's making curves, it's slowing down. Grayscale is another one that will use max and min power. So on grayscale, if you have it as a regular image, not a negative, your max power will be your darks. So everything from black down will fit within a threshold between your max power and your min power. So if you're running a grayscale image, your whites to light grays to mid-dark, it's all going to be fluctuating as the engraving is happening based off of your max and min power. And these are really, besides the power scale feature in Lightburn, those are the only situations where you're going to have to worry about your min power. The controller, at least on a Rudia controller, it does not reference the min power unless you're doing those things. All right, so quickly, back at it. We have it set. What we're going to do now is, since we have this line set to 10 inches, this line set to 20 inches per second, and the third line, red line, to 30 inches per second, we're now going to change these squares up and down to different levels of power. So we'll switch over to shape properties. And shape properties has different uses and functions depending on what we're working with. And today we're working with vectors, and it's going to give us corner radius and height and width adjustments along with power scale. So I want this first row to be 10%. So it is going to use 10% of the threshold I gave it. And this one's going to be 20%, 30%, 40%, 50, 60, and 70. Okay, so if we go to our preview, we should have a scaled, and as you can see, I have that on lined. Okay, let's see, so let's go over here. Our red is on a line. Let's make sure that it is. There we go. And quickly again, there we go. Now we have our shading according to power, which is right here. Shading according to power. So now you'll see the result that you should be getting when you transfer this over to the laser. So the idea behind this, and this can be used on all different types of material. This is to see where your laser is going to be the most effective or give you the outcome that you're looking for. Because like on acrylic and on wood, there is no specific power. It depends on the depth that you want, the darkness you want. You know, there's a lot of different end results that you can come to depending on your settings. And just because Joe has this setting doesn't mean that it's the correct one for what you're trying to achieve. So I'm going to send this over to the laser, and then we are going to film that and discuss a little bit about glass and some of the issues that I see with some of the stuff going on the interwebs of how to engrave glass. So using some of those other tactics of the wet paper towel and the palm olive and all that stuff has gotten me nowhere. Actually, I'm gonna grab another cup real quick. This line here is with a paper towel, a wet paper towel. And of course we could probably go up in power, but again, this is 10 through 100 power. And the result really isn't that great. Using palm olive, we basically got the same result that we got here. And on this one, we're going from 10 inches per second, 20 inches per second, and just about the max of this machine, 30 inches per second. And I think we're 20 or 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, something like that. So using a test like this will help you tremendously to dial in your settings. And I recommend doing our test file that we have on the forum page as your test material, basically swatch that you can keep. I punch a hole through it and I keep it on a ring, so if I ever have to reference back to it, I have it. Now you see that we have beautiful white engraving, but if you look that when I touch it, you can see my oils. Well, it looks like there's oils, and it kind of gets a little clear. Now on these, I don't have much in the way of shards that are going to cut me. As I go up through, I can actually see a couple places where it is going to, you can see it chipping off there. I don't care what power you use, you're micro fracturing this cup. So whether you have it nice and soft and smooth there, or really deep up here, where it's already starting to micro fracture and come off, it's going to do it eventually. On glass, you put it in the dishwasher, it goes through different temperature cycles. Eventually, somebody's going to get a piece of glass in their finger when they touch this. Just because it goes out like this and it's good and it feels right and it's not cutting your finger, doesn't mean it's not going to do it eventually. And I can kind of prove that to you. So my point with all of this is there's a lot of talk about all these different settings for glass, and in my opinion, it just doesn't matter. As you can see with this one, these are all different power settings, different speeds, and I've gotten pretty much the same result. And the only thing that I'm going to recommend to you is, after you do a test like this, on glass, we're going to use a wire wheel to clean it. And you don't have to dig into it, you don't have to do anything crazy, you just lightly go over it, enough to pull that micro fracturing off of the glass. This way you don't ever have to worry about it affecting someone else down the road. That's the last thing you want to do, is send a beautiful glass home with somebody, they put it through the dishwasher, then it starts to have this type of issue here, and they go, oh wow, what is that? And they run their finger across it, and now they have all little shards of glass in their fingertip. My way of solving this is just using an angle grinder, and you can use anything you want, a drill with a brush on it like this, but I just use this and I go over it lightly, not too hard, because then you'll start to basically blue the glass. It'll actually start to change the color, gray it out, blue it out a little bit, just from the heat and the metal residue coming off of the brush wheel. But I literally lightly go over it. And as you can tell, regardless of the power that I used, I got the same result. The only difference is there's depth. I can feel a little bit more depth to it. That is the only difference. In fact, the hotter I go, the more I can see my lines. And as we discussed back on the original video of developing this graphic, I'm at 0.002, so that's really an overlapping line interval anyway. But as I go deeper, I can still see the little lines in there. Maybe you can defocus it a little bit, but you are still micro fracturing the glass. And if you don't clean it up, this stuff is gonna happen eventually. The fact that this does not, but it looks like the oils of my finger are getting in there. The oils of my finger are not getting in there. It's actually pushing itself back up against the glass that's still on the cup. So you got a layer of glass that is protruded away from the actual glass itself. So you have that hovering layer, and then underneath you have your regular glass. And what we're doing is we're taking that hovering layer off. Now, if you do this light enough, you will not get any scratching. You won't get any additional results or negative results of doing this, besides cleaning it off so somebody else doesn't have to basically get hurt by it. So clean it off real quick. And as you can see, we have great results, and it really didn't matter. There wasn't a whole bunch of complicated thought processes as to what the correct power or procedure was to do this. So regardless of what power we used, now of course if you have, this was on a 30 watt, if you have 100 watt or higher, I would probably veer away from some of these higher settings, but run it and see. There is a point where you will actually crack the glass deep enough to shatter it. So, you know, if you're gonna do this, maybe on 100 watt, run it to 50 and see what happens. That would probably be the equivalent of running it on mine at full blast. But I try to make things a little less complicated, and I don't think too much about all of the settings and variabilities. I test it and I make sure and I see, rather than leaving those lingering questions. Everybody has a different machine, you know, different power source, different tube. You know, some of them have been used a lot more than others. So the strength of that tube, somebody's 100 watt tube that they've used for 4 years and somebody's tube that they just got is going to be different. So going off of somebody else's settings is not necessarily the right way to go. It's a start point. Doing stuff like this so you have an example of where to go to, and of course, you know, you can engrave the numbers into that, so put the text in the middle so that you know exactly what it was. But the last thing I want to say is just make sure you clean them off really well. Even if you think that it feels right, those microfibers will come off eventually, and somebody will call you and complain about them. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the like button below. We will continue to try to produce really cool and useful content for you. Guys, thanks for watching. Have a great one.